Welcome to REFI TV. I'm Samantha Rowan, and I'm here today with Norman Radow of the RADCO companies and Dan Lisser of Johnson Capital. And today we're going to be talking about energy-related commercial real estate investments. Welcome to REFI TV, Dan and Norm.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Norman, I'd like to start out with a little bit about what you guys have been doing lately, because it seems like you've made a lot of energy-related multifamily acquisitions in places like Casper, Oklahoma, and parts of Denver as well. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what your strategy is.
Well, sure. We've acquired two multifamily properties in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we have a large asset in Denver, the largest multifamily deal that closed this year. And we are in contract to buy another one in Denver. We like both markets, and we like them in part because of the energy expansion in the United States that we've all been reading about. And both markets we like because they're bigger than just energy. So energy is an important part of the fabric of the economy there, but it is not the only part. We love Tulsa because it's not only an energy producer, but it's also the crux of all the pipelines in the Midwest. They go through Tulsa, and I think the Keystone Pipeline will ultimately go through Tulsa, and that's where it'll all connect to travel all throughout down to the southwest and the southeast. So we love that because it's not just playing production, but playing the pipeline, and those pipes are going to be in use for decades and decades. So we're very excited about both markets, and we love the fact that energy is really helping those economies. We have unemployment in Tulsa of 4.3% or so, the lowest in the country, I believe. And Denver is right behind it, about 5%, and energy is a good part of that. So we're playing on that growth, and we like it.
And Dan, you've been working through Johnson Capital in some of the markets out in the western and midwestern U.S., and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what you're seeing there.
I think similar to Norman, we've been doing a lot of work up in the Balkan, up in North Dakota, in Williston, Dickinson, and Watford City. And you have just seen an explosion of building, of investment by major companies, Baker Hughes, Hess, Schlumberger, and just a phenomenal explosion in employment and just people living up there. And that has translated into just increased economic activity and increased building. So we've been seeing, not surprisingly, a lot of multifamily going on, a lot of hospitality to house these workers. And I think the one thing that is missing and we're starting to see is the retail, because what you're seeing is a lot of these workers do come up, spend 3-4 weeks up there and go home. I think the goal is to get these workers to move their families up there, and what they are trying to do now is just improve the quality of life, building more retail, building bowling alleys, building indoor water parks. The big difference between what we see up there and what Norman just discussed is that it's much more purely a production play, where it's a very dependent on the production of oil. And I think what we, out of nowhere 5 years ago, North Dakota wasn't on the map, and now it's the second largest oil producing state behind Texas, is that everybody is very much aware of this now. And I think the key issue originally when we were up there is how long is this going to last for. North Dakota did have a mini oil boom, I think in the 80s, that filtered out very quickly. But what I've been told and what we have been seeing is that based on the new technology and based on the proven supply out there, that this is a 30 to 40 year run, which are making lenders very comfortable about going up there.
And it's more than just fracking, right? There's sand, there's kind of other things.
Well, I think it's mainly it's fracking, but it's also natural gas and oil. And I think there's been a lot of talk about with natural gas, if you don't capture it, you just flare it off, which is bad for the environment. And the state has mandated that producers, reduce the flaring off, to a certain amount. So, that they've been building the infrastructure to bring that out, probably down towards Tulsa, to where Norman's properties are. But I think just overall, from a economic employment production point of view, most people believe this is an industry that's been around for 30 to 40 years at least, based on current technology, which will require the continued high level of employment and money being spent up there.
And Norman, have you looked at those markets at all, or are you more concentrated in the kind of Oklahoma, like that portion of the country?
Well, I have, and it takes more gumption than I have to do what you're doing. You're creating a city. We were talking about it off camera about the fact that it's really become a company town, and without the company actually building all these things, but all of the necessities that the Pullmans in the 1880s would build around their manufacturing facilities and mining facilities have to be built here. So you're building everything from scratch: roads and schools and restaurants and hotels and apartments and different types of entertainment all have to be built from scratch, and that just takes a man with more stamina than me to deal with that. But the rewards are there.
The rewards are there, and I think also, the fact that the cost of an apartment in Williston is close to what it costs to rent an apartment in New York City and San Francisco is just not going to last. But what you do see, there is a wealth of new supply coming on, but because the town does not have the infrastructure to handle, all the new construction that is needed, and the fact that it's very difficult to build up there with the short building season due to the harsh climate, that we have seen that most of the groups that have gone up there, even groups that got in maybe a little bit later, have been very successful because there's just not enough housing up there, which also benefits a lot of the hotels, where a lot of the hotels are leased out by the oil companies to house their workers. So from a credit point of view, it's not an individual oil worker on the lease. It's an oil company leasing it for a year.
What about on the lending side? What are lenders saying about loans that they're originating in these markets?
We have been doing work up there, and lenders have been relatively active up there, but most lenders are much more concerned about the downside than the upside because they don't share in the upside, and they believe there's a very binary risk that is involved with that. So what we have seen is most lenders willing to go out 5 years in term, and basically they limit the amortization to 10 to 15 years. So on a 5-year deal, in a 10-year amortization, you reduce a lot of your risk. And we've been trying, for some of our clients to get them to stretch out the amortization term, and that's been difficult, but hopefully we'll make some progress.
And is it a factor for you at all, Norman, when you're getting loans? Like, do the lenders look at the energy component as like a positive for the deal?
Well, what we'll find. Let me talk about Tulsa, which is more has a larger energy component to its economy. The lenders are robust, and they're anxious to put out money in real estate. There's actually a paucity of equity and developers there. Oh, really? So, and that's why we like being there, because we found that there are a few local developers that they're focusing on tried and true. They haven't taken the next step that many other markets have and gotten more sophisticated. And so we've been coming, and what we love about Tulsa is there's no direct flight to Tulsa from New York City. So capital, Wall Street, has not gone to Tulsa, even though it is a growing city. The New York Times just this week had an article on its front page about Oklahoma, and saying that for the first time in history, and we've known this for about 2 or 3 years now, there are more people moving from California to Oklahoma than Oklahoma to California. They talked about the reverse of the grapes of wrath. It's now the wrath of grapes. And so we're seeing population increase, 4.3% unemployment. So you have effectively full employment, but you don't have sophisticated developers building new cutting-edge projects, and you don't have capital. So we're going in and buying B-class apartment properties for a true 8 cap on trailing numbers, borrowing at 3. It works just like that, but we're actually doing significant renovations, and it's the first time that in decades that you've seen B-class renovations in Tulsa. So we're giving them the market about 90% of a Class A at about 70% of the cost, and it's a true value. So we're hitting a home run there, so we like it. Just don't let anyone else know about it. So that's what we see in Tulsa. There are more lenders who understand what's going on than there are deals for them to lend upon. So we're finding it a great market for us to do business. In Denver, it's a more sophisticated market. It's a larger market. The economy is centered on many different industries, but energy is one of them. And the one thing about in both markets that we're finding is that we're having difficulty in attracting labor, especially maintenance staff and construction, because the energy industry is siphoning them off at these fabulous salaries that we've been talking about. So that's the one thing that we're finding is difficult for us in both markets, is getting good labor because of energy. So it's sort of a two-edged sword, but I like the edge that we're focusing on.
Is it the same?
Yeah, you have seen the same thing in Williston, where you drive down the main street and every restaurant, every retailer has, for hire signs in the window. McDonald's in Williston will pay you a $900 bonus if you last 3 months there, because similar to what Norman was saying, these oil companies are just siphoning off the people, and it's been very difficult for some of these retailers and restaurants to hire staff and keep staff.
You had mentioned before, Dan, that the construction season is very short in that region, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how that presents a challenge for deals.
Well, I think it's challenging because if you don't hit the season right, get your foundation in and your structure up before the winter sets in, you basically, it's very, even though it's possible, it's very difficult to work outdoors, and especially with concrete, and trying to set concrete in the cold weather is much more expensive, and it's just a lot more difficult. So you do see, people rushing to get work done. One topic that has been discussed, not surprisingly, is modular building, which I think some of the issues that have been brought up is that the closest factory is far away, and the savings is somewhat diminished by how long they have to go, and the ability to put in enough insulation to weather the harsh winters up there with modular is much more difficult. But I think there has been people looking at that. It just makes sense that you can do a lot of the work off-site, indoors, and just like Lego almost, transport it and put it in. So and as we discussed before, on top of that, just the infrastructure, we're getting sewer lines out to the property and just can the town handle this increase building has been an issue also for a lot of these developers out there. But as Norman said, people are rushing out there, and moving. Williston probably was the first city that saw the development, and now you're seeing it move south to Dickinson and even Watford City, as drilling migrates to different areas out there.
So you have a very short construction period. The weather could come at any moment, but you can't plan the winter there. No. It could happen very early. You can't get labor. You can't bring in supplies. You have lenders who want a 10-year amortization that just rapes your cash flow. So tell me about how do you make money there?
Why? Because even with all those harsh things, if you do get it built, you get your money back, and you're earning 25% in year two on your money. So if you get it built, which is the tough part, it will get leased up and you will make money. And I think what we're seeing, on the amortization on multifamily, they're starting to stretch that out. So that was the first one, probably would go to 15. We've been doing a lot of work on hotels there, and they're really, trying to cap that at 10 years, and we've been trying to push it out. But when you get these crazy values for, lower branded hotels at $100,000 a key, lenders and the committees are just, you're rightly uncomfortable, where the comment comes back, if there's one environmental issue, that value goes from $100,000 to $30,000 a key. And everybody is very aware about some environmental concerns. I think some of the environmental, I think certainly the residents of North Dakota are very concerned about the environment, but they also realize this is, a gift that comes along once in a lifetime. And I think we're also aware that this administration, and maybe the future administration, is much more environmentally conscious. And I think from our point of view, one, most of the drilling in North Dakota is done on private estate land, not on federal land. And two, because it uses a massive amount of water, being right on the Missouri River is also very beneficial. So I think, certainly you do have, an environmental risk, but, it is, I think everybody is working very hard to minimize and make sure that doesn't happen.
I want to make it a very serious question. I know it's being tongue-in-cheek, but it was a great answer. I see in our industry now that multifamily is the flavor of the month, and the capital is accumulating to invest in it. So they're looking for more developers to provide money to. So more developers are coming out of the woodworks, some that went under 5 years ago or resurrecting themselves because there's so much money that and needs to be absorbed. So you're getting a lot of thinly capitalized, inexperienced developers now in our space. And I'm wondering, given the complexities of your business, are you seeing some of those inexperienced, undercapitalized companies going there? And if so, how do they deal with those complex problems?
Well,
thoughtfully, or they?
I think most of the groups we've been working with have been experienced. Some have not been from the area, but certainly in their backyard, very experienced builders, and competent. And I think they, hire some local guys. Certainly some local help. On the zoning, on the legal side, but it's once they get it up, and once the foundation is in, I think building is building, and I think once they get through that part, it's done. And I think most of them have been, either through their own equity or through their if they have joint venture equity, able to have enough to get the project done.
We have time for one more question, and I'd like both of you to look forward a little bit and talk about what you see as the future of this industry. Dan, like if you think that these kind of little towns that are being built are going to blossom into bigger ones, and Norman, what your business is going to do next in terms of energy-related investments.
Well, I think certainly, the energy boom in this country is going to continue, and just not in North Dakota. You see it in the Marcellus Shale in northeastern Pennsylvania. And also I think the newest one that's coming to everybody's attention is the Utica Shale in southeastern Pennsylvania and Ohio. And I do think that such as towns as Williston is going to continue to get bigger as it's going to continue to be the hub in the Balkan region. And I think, in the Utica Shale, you're going to see a city as Cambridge, Ohio, which, is Williston 4 or 5 years ago. Just the amount of oil companies moving in, the amount of drills being built mirrors a lot of what Williston was 4 or 5 years ago. And I think just the last thing is, just from a national security point of view, the fact that this country now is almost energy independent, it could be a net exporter.
Yes.
Is something nobody could even think of 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, which is a positive too.
Very positive.
Every cycle, someone starts to say when we get towards a peak that this cycle is different, and that this is only the beginning of a upcycle, not the end of one. But I'll tell you something. I think you're right. I think this cycle is different. I think that what's happening on the ground with energy is structured. It is not a bubble. Pricing actually has been pretty consistent at about $100 a barrel. It may go up or down $10, but you're not seeing that $30 to $150 and down to $100. You're not seeing those wild swings. And with the instability in the rest of the world, we have to produce our own energy. So I think that is. I think that is absolutely correct, that this is different. And I think it's the first time in my life we can say that. The second thing is in my business, multifamily, I think it's also different. We have actually gone through the last 6 years now of coming out from a very, very bad recession. And normally you'd think this is the time where you'd be peaking. But in fact, job growth is just starting.
Right.
And So we're full at 97, 98% in many of our properties, probably 95% for our portfolio of 7,000 units in 6 different cities. So it's not just one micro market. And the jobs are first coming. So where are these people going to live? And they're going to have more money to pay and want better quality housing. So I think also on the ground in multifamily that we are really at a new place, because I think 4 or 5 different factors are creating the type of change that happened after World War II, where 10 million Americans came back all at once, married all at once, had kids all at once, and moved to Levittown. And while there's not one event, there are maybe 4 or 5, 6 different factors. I think the end result is the same, that people moving into multifamily, that's a structured change. It's not a, we're just doing it now, we're going to buy a house next year as soon as we can afford it. That, coupled with the growth in jobs in the energy sector and following that growth, I think that our business has a long future ahead of us.
Thank you very much. That's excellent perspective from both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And I'm Samantha Rowan, and this is REFI TV.